Okay, this module, we're thinking about this next step of building the working relationship and engaging. And so we're talking about how do we open and close a first meeting, maybe all meetings, right? We would do different things on that first meeting than we would subsequent meetings that we're, doing with clients, but we're really going to talk about that first meeting. And we're going to just spend a couple of brief seconds thinking through concepts that we just recently covered. So again, when we think about opening and closing our time together with a client, the whole point is that we're attending to what our clients are telling us. So we're really focusing in on what they're saying, making sound observations about their nonverbal behavior and what's happening in that context. And so attending behaviors really are to help the client tell their story. It focuses as a way for non-productive topics and just non-productive thoughts and other things that are happening. And these attending behaviors convey that we're interested, that we're paying attention, we are open, we are receptive, we're not judgmental, we care, all these things, right? And so really the things that we can do to show that we're attending are sort of solar, right? So that's kind of this, our posture is straight, it's open, it's sort of leaning in. We have eye contact, right? So that we're doing these things and we're showing that we're engaged. It can be prompts and minimal encouragers, just those brief little mm-hms or okay, say more, just little things that we can do that show that we're still engaged and we're following along. And then active listening, right? Which is an easy thing to say and a harder thing to do, I think, often. And then warmth we talked about. So Amy Cuddy has done some research into presence. And what I think is interesting from some of the work that she's done, and she's not alone in this, is that people process words related to warmth faster than words related to competence. So we're in a competency-based profession and in this educational system, so we're very focused on the skills, the knowledge, the values of our profession and helping you learn those and demonstrate those. But things such as skillful, as a word that might describe us as professionals, those words get processed more slowly. They sort of don't sink in as quickly as words such as friendly and honest. People prioritize warmth because kind of evolutionarily speaking, it's survival is important, and we want to know who we should trust, if we should stay, if we should disclose, if we should do those things. So while we value capability, we only notice this after we've judged the trustworthiness. So a trust as a conduit of influence. And so all of these pieces that we're talking, these sort of, as I've called them, squishy sorts of concepts, like how do we demonstrate warmth and, active listening and some of these pieces, like these pieces are important because we think about trust and folks having the trust in us as a conduit for change in a way of influence. And so again, a couple just things to kind of keep pulling through the thread of last week into this week. So opening and closing. I think it's interesting and important to think about principles of trauma-informed care for a lot of reasons, and most of which is we all hold trauma, some more than others, some in different ways, right? But just thinking about some of the core principles of trauma-informed care, you can see here empowerment, voice, choice, that we're trustworthy and transparent, we're collaborative, there's safety and stability, there's connection, inclusion. all of these pieces, a lot of this does feed into just even how we open and hold our time with clients. And so how we can bring these in. And you have a reading that was sent that you can see more about these principles. When we think about empowerment, voice, choice, we think about collaboration and shared purpose and transparency and trustworthiness. Those things really do come in the opening of our meetings. Because one of the big things we want to do is orient the client, orient them to what's going to happen, what they can expect, the limitations of what we can do service-wise and confidentiality-wise. And so thinking through these questions will help you think about this orienting the client as a concept, right? So when we open, we set the tone. We're responsible for that beginning. We're responsible for these pieces. So some very important things that we can do that help, I think, orient a client and set this tone is that we introduce ourselves. We tell people our role, maybe how we situate within all of the services that they're getting. So maybe we're one social worker amongst many, or maybe we're the primary person or the only person that they're seeking help from. So we kind of introduce that role, and we also seek introductions, and that's how they want to be referred to by you. We can have people share their pronouns and let us know how that functions for them. And so thinking through those, just even those initial pieces, right? Where we might sit, where we're going to meet. We're going to discuss the initial purpose. So why we're here, maybe it was a referral, maybe that's what you know, and you want to outline that piece. We want to explain the process. We want to tell them, so this is how our time together is going to function. And maybe you have paperwork you have to complete. Maybe every week you're going to see them and it's going to be done in a similar way. So just kind of telling them, much like we do in a class, like, okay, day one, we talk about here's the things, here's the assignments, here's the schedule, this is kind of the attendance policy. Going through the syllabus is kind of this initial purpose and sort of this orientation piece, which then also includes our ethical and agency policies. That includes, this is a confidential space. What you tell me here, by and large, stays here. But then we really have to think about how we want to tell them and spend some concerted time and attention to the fact that there are limitations to that, right? We talked about that in our ethics chapter. And so what you say here stays here unless, and there's two instances, right, where we can't hold that confidentiality. And we meaningfully, hopefully, talk to them about this and make sure they truly do understand. And the more we can do this very first meeting, the better we're going to be able to repair or move through if we have to make a report, because we're mandatory reporters in the end. So those instances where confidentiality can be kept is if you tell me and have a plan to harm yourself or someone else, and that there's weight to that that there's really some planning, there's some detail around that. The other thing would be if I have a reasonable belief that there is abuse, neglect of a child or a vulnerable adult, that you disclose enough information to me, and I have, suspicion, or I have some good belief that this is happening. Those would be times where I would have to break our confidentiality and tell the proper, make reports to the proper avenues. So we really want to be thoughtful about that. We can explore, again, the purpose overall. We can talk about agency and worker services, what I can, what I can't do on behalf of you. The other thing we want to do to this orienting of policies, right, because we have these legal duties that we have in is to, again, think through technology and think about the ethical considerations, and maybe, again, in the upfront, having a communication policy with your clients and telling them what that looks like. Our openings really are, hopefully a process of instilling hope, and that this relationship can help them and make the change that they want or need. So it's a process of welcoming and naming ourselves, our concerns, and our hopes. On the flip side, we want to bookend a meeting in a nice way, so it's not just all of a sudden like, oh, time's up, bye, and we just kind of leave folks hanging a bit. And so we want to, things we can do is identify the meeting's about to end, or give that 5-minute sort of warning so that we hopefully just don't avoid a bombshell at the very end that's hard to, navigate or attend to. We can invite or offer a summary just around the process, the content, what we've done, thoughts and feelings. We can review any tasks that maybe have come up. Think about future meetings. You can invite client feedback. A nice thing is ask for any final questions. I often do that in class, right? So before we end today, do you have any final questions or thoughts? Or anything you want to share with me about how this is working for you or how today went, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of bring those together. And then we can recognize their participation. Thank you for coming and for being here today and for their presence and their hard work. So here's just some examples that you have in the handout. Again, we have about 5 minutes left today. So we just have some time left. Kind of just mark that so people know that the ending is coming, and you can kind of see through these other examples. And one thing I like to highlight in the Fin reading is just a couple of questions that we can, ask ourselves. What am I taking away from this that's going to inform my next meeting? So maybe it's that feedback, it's that summary, it's that question, it's what's working well, what maybe somebody needs. And then what did you learn about yourself and the possibilities for justice work in this encounter? This is a little bit of a spacing issue here in this encounter. And so one last thing, dialogue really is coming together and having, some open communication. Fin says, in dialogue, we confirm the importance of others and begin to heal the rift between self, other, and institution. Only humble and loving dialogue can surmount the barrier of mistrust built from years of oppression, racism, inequality, and this creates the possibility for justice work. So that's opening and closing our meetings.